So more needs to be done. Sometimes that's the bottom line, and there's a lot to be done, like she's mentioned. What exactly can we do? Holger Lösch, you've already met him. He's going to try to answer a couple of those questions on his next panel. Welcome back on stage.
So I hope my guests are going to answer the questions. So before, in the last panel, so of course, if you look at the overall issues, if you look at the crisis currently, so you might lose a little bit of hope. But I think the next panel is going to give us some hope, because on an individual, on a country base, there is many things are happening. Business is on the way. Governments are looking at what can be the change and what chances we can have from these changes. And those two examples we are talking about now are Colombia and Australia. So both partners. So we did a bit more with Australia in the last years, but of course we are in talks with Colombia since 2 or 3 years, I would say, and talking about a project just to look what could be chances of the future. So we all know that the fossil energy has shaped the world for centuries now, almost more than a century. And now we are on a different way. And I think what Jennifer Morgan just said is that we need all those partnerships. So we have to build it up from the bottom, but with a clear vision from the top. And the cards of international relations are going to be reshuffled. This is what we see today. They might be reshuffled in a negative way if people are going to step back from the commitments they gave. But of course, we see a lot of examples where new commitments are coming, where initiatives are taken, and where just things are happening. And this is what we want to talk about. So, first of all, I would like to ask María Fernanda Valdés. She's the Deputy Minister of Industry and Business Development of the Republic of Colombia. Here, she would give us a short impulse, and then we would go there and talk together with Philip Green, the ambassador of Australia in Germany. So, Mrs. Valdés, floor is yours.
This is working? Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is María Fernanda Valdés. I'm the Vice Minister of Industry of Colombia, and it's really a great pleasure to be here with you today. I've given 5 minutes to talk, so I'm gonna try to be very efficient with my time. I also have to say that jet lag is killing me at the moment. We are 8 hours difference, and it's challenging sometimes to talk with jet lag, but let's use my 5 minutes to give 3 main ideas about Colombia. 3 main ideas that I think are relevant for you, the private sector. The first one is that we have in Colombia an energy market that is really developed. We have an electricity market that is, we have business in almost every Latin American country. Colombian business are in almost every Latin American country, from Mexico down to Chile. And this is something very relevant as well. We are producing clean energy. Around 80% of that production is clean. And with the investments that we have at the moment, in a couple of years, we're going to have 90% clean. And we are sure that in 10 years, we're going to have 100% clean energy matrix. And this is a privilege for a country like Colombia, because that means that we can start producing clean energy products, and that gives us an advantage to other countries in the region, not to mention countries in Europe. That's my first point. The second point has to do with geography. Many people don't know that we are the closest Latin American country to Germany. and that it's really important when you think about energy production. Yesterday we were in Nuremberg talking about the hydrogen market, sorry. And many people there didn't know how close we are and how relevant distance is for exporting and for this discussion about the climate. And the third point that I want to mention today is that we are a new government. Actually, I'm in this charge only 2 weeks ago, and I decided to come here to Germany because this is a very relevant topic. I'm going to tell you why. Our government won the elections because it has a climate agenda. And it seems so natural for Europeans, but believe me, coming from the South, that's a discourse that is not very common in our countries. We had to discuss so much, and we had so many opponents on this environmental view. And in this aspect, Colombia is quite unique in the region, I have to tell you, because not many countries really believe in this transition and in what is happening. We have actually the transition going on, as I said before. We have almost a clean electricity matrix, and our government won with this idea that we need to transit to a new model, economic model. It is also not very usual to hear a country that exports almost only oil and carbon. At the moment we are exporting coal to Germany, and maybe you know that we wanted to stop exporting coal, but things change in Germany, and now maybe also because of solidarity we are exporting coal, even though our discourse is that we have to stop that now. So with those three main ideas, I want to go to the discussion with the ambassador of Australia, telling you that we have an energy market. The first idea, we have an energy market that is really efficient and is really clean, and we have the geography that help us to have a good market here in Europe. And the third one is that we have the political will to change things in Colombia, and that's very uncommon in Latin America. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you a lot for this. So I just found out that you both of your countries have something very in common. So you have newly elected governments, and both of them probably won because of a climate agenda. So perhaps I would start with Philip. So how much do you think has this new thinking, so your new government has displayed in the election campaign, helped them to win the election? And how is the mindset in Australia have been developing over the last years?
Thanks, Holger. I too was very interested by what Fernanda said, because it's very familiar. Our election in May wasn't just fought on climate issues. There was a broad range of questions at stake, but I think it's a reasonable read on an election to say that climate was one of the starker differences between the parties. And not only was there a swing towards the Labour Party, which had a more forward-leaning climate position, there's also the election of a number of independents, individuals who won electorates who weren't connected to either of the political parties, for whom climate was the core issue. Now, I have to be honest with you, my country, there are different views in my country. That's not surprising in a country which has the largest coal reserves in the world. And it's often said in my country that climate is the issue that kills multiple prime ministers. But my sense of it is that we have reached a new equilibrium in our country. My sense of it is that the scale of the issues, and indeed the opportunities for Australia in a post-carbon world, have shifted the balance, I think, in a way that is irreversible, and that we have now reached a new place in our national voice, our national debate on climate issues.
Yeah, Minister Valdés, so we have been talking to parts of the former government with Colombia, and they already had quite an agenda on renewables and so on. You mentioned it that Colombia you have a lot of water power, hydropower, which of course during climate change might deteriorate a little bit, but you're looking at a lot of renewables as alternatives, and then to get to 100% renewable energy production in Australia. So what do you think is the mindset in Colombia of the people? Did they understand that this change is going to provide the country with new opportunities?
Okay.
It's on.
Things are different now in Colombia, and I tell you what is different. We are not emitters. We don't produce carbon. Yes, we don't contribute to this crisis, and that's something we have clear. But we came to a point that we understood, and this is very clear in this new government I'm representing here, that with the economics system we had, we cannot develop. We cannot develop if we continue only producing oil and coal, right? So our idea, whatever we do, we are not going to change the climate crisis, right? But if we don't adapt to a new future, we are not going to have any future. And that's something we understood. So we want to change our economic system, not because we don't want to contribute to this crisis, because we don't do it anyways. We are not contributing to it. But we want to change because we realize that is the only way we can develop. And that's what is really different. It's not about energy transition for us, right? Because as I said, we have a clear energy system. It's every time cleaner. And at the same time, we don't contribute to this crisis.
Philip, so you already mentioned it's iron ore, it's coal, it's gas. So it's quite a fossil portfolio. Australia has been famous for many decades. So could you give us a brief sketch? Where do you think is the change in the value creation patterns going to in the next 10, 15 years?
Oh, well, I mean, it's pretty obvious, Holger, that we need to adapt, and this is widely accepted throughout our society, from a country that has earned a lot of its past from producing and exporting fossil fuels. And that will happen first with coal. I think, you know, what's going on in this country demonstrates that gas is going to be needed globally for a long time. I think we have got to the point globally where we are reaching or have reached peak oil and peak coal. But the beauty of this in our society is that we have a vast resource of renewable energy which can replace not only the jobs in Australia in this, but can help power the world in the way that we've previously powered the world through coal and natural gas. Now, just to give your audience a key statistic here, if you just take 3% of the Australian landmass and you just apply that for solar, not wind, you wouldn't do that because we have good wind as well as solar resources. If you do that, that produces enough renewable energy for 10 times Germany's annual requirements. So we have essentially an unending resource in renewable energy, which in the form of hydrogen derivatives we believe is entirely open for creating a value chain with Germany. Now, your question also has embedded within it, I think, the question, is that not going to change industry patterns in Australia? And will we not want to go further up the manufacturing cycle rather than just producing iron ore and energy? And I think the answer is yes, but I wouldn't overestimate it for this audience. I think that, I mean, for a long time, Australia has been a producer of alumina, a producer of bauxite, and a producer of finished aluminium. I think the same thing is going to happen with our resources in relation to steel. I don't think for a minute that your country will cease to be a major producer and exporter of steel. I do think my country will probably use more green steel, but I perceive that there is a future for Australia and Germany, which is, yes, we will produce more of the finished product, but we will also be able to provide you the iron ore that we have in the past and green energy for powering your steel plants.
Mr. Valdés, so what are your plans? So you have a lot of hydro. You have, so the rest is done by coal until now. You're exporting coal and oil. So what are the plans? Where are you going to make your energy consumption in Colombia 100% green? And then, so what are the plans for using these capacities to be a player on global markets?
Yes, as I said before, we are not emitting. Maybe we are not contributing a lot to this problem, but we think that we can be the solution or part of the solution in this. And Colombia has 51% of all its territory is forest, and 35% is the Amazonian. So we really need to think about a developing plan, and that's what we are planning at the moment, that includes what is really important in our country, which is our nature. So we have, for energy, we had a lot of potential for wind and for sun. Experts know about this. We are almost a whole potential on that, and we are working on that. But we also want to build a new economy that includes the products of the forest and the Amazonian in a big bet for bioeconomy. So that's the plan. Of course, it's not easy. We are a dependent economy on fossil, you know what I mean? Not very green energy. We are addicted to that, and we need to change that. But we have the plan, and we know the vision, and we know where we have to go.
Are you planning to be a producer and exporter of things like hydrogen, for example?
Of what?
Hydrogen.
That's what we are doing at the moment. In fact, we have a roadmap of hydrogen, green hydrogen. We can produce it, according to our studies, we can produce it even cheaper than in many other countries. $1.7 per kilogram. That's a very competitive price, and we are working on that. We have already some pilots going on. Our big oil company, that's something particular as well. Our oil company, which is Ecopetrol, is doing the transition as well. That's not very common in other countries. Oil companies tend to reject the transition, but our oil company is working on that. And we have some pilots, and they are going on. We have also incentives, maybe the biggest incentives in the region for this green transition.
Philip, in Australia we see a lot of fossil giants, iron ore giants, LNG giants going into the hydrogen thing. So my question, because Jennifer Morgan said, so we need partnerships. Perhaps do we need new forms of partnerships on a global scale if we go into a time when it's not what you have under your feet, but it's what you have as technology to exploit sun and wind. So what are your thoughts about how partnerships on this scale in a new energy world have to develop?
Well, I think, Holger, you know very well that we already have a very successful partnership between Australia and Germany. And that's natural because we have some of the best sun and wind underlying endowments for the world in order to create a hydrogen export industry. But we have very good science, and we've been in the business of exporting energy for 70 years. So there's a lot of people who know a lot about that. What we don't have is what you have in spades. What we don't have is a highly developed manufacturing and engineering and technical industry that can provide all of the inputs for our hydrogen plants. And every time that I hear new plants coming from Australia, I hear the same German companies' names mentioned as the likely providers of electrolyzers. You know, ThyssenKrupp, Siemens Energy, MAN, Linde, it's the same crew. Now, our partnership so far has produced a feasibility study to which essentially the answer to the question, is it feasible to have a supply chain in green hydrogen between Australia and Germany? Yes. We need to get beyond feasibility studies. We need to get into making fact studies, achieving a supply chain in green hydrogen between Australia and Germany. And here, I want to give praise to the German government for the development of H2 Global, because that stands out globally as a very powerful mechanism to support the early phases of trade when it will be difficult to make the shipping of hydrogen from anywhere around the world, including Australia, difficult for firms to make a profit. There's no doubt there will be rich profits in the near future, but the early phase needs to be supported by government, and your H2 Global is a sentinel in that regard.
Mr. Valdés, so this is a very new government, but you having very ambitious plans to go that way. So if you look at Germany or Europe, let's say Europe and Germany, so what would be your expectations in terms of how we could be partners? As you know, so we need a lot of green energy in the future. We cannot produce everything at home. So that's the one thing. On the other hand, of course, we are very interested in developing market possibilities and chances for our technology companies. So what do you have any thoughts in Colombia how a partnership could develop, and what could be different from partnerships we are having today in shipping coal, shipping oil?
Yeah, that's actually why we are here at the moment. We came with a group of people from Colombia. We have been visiting many people in the government, but also in the private sector. And we need, first of all, as he said, we also need technology. We need technology transfer to build a strong capacity in hydrogen. We already have a strong capacity in wind and solar, and we're working on that. But we, as you said, we need to think about a way of producing things abroad. I mean, instead of trying to think all the time how we can transport hydrogen or other products to Germany to build them here and construct them here, we are looking for a way of doing things also in Colombia. And that will be a perfect win-win situation. We have the energy, the cheap energy. It's cheap and clean, and we have also people working for us there. And we can think about a partnership that works in that direction. I think it's not only good for us, it's not a win-win situation, but a win-win because it's also a win situation for the planet. Not to start, and we don't want to continue forever being an exporter of energy. We would like to produce things at home as well.
Philip, perhaps to get into the final round, because our minister is already here. And so we've been talking a lot about we not only see the climate issue, we not only see the energy crisis we're having, but of course we see tectonic changes in geopolitics. Perhaps you are a very experienced diplomat, having looked at this for decades now. So what do you think, are there chances in this new kind of partnerships, in this new kind of energy partnerships, technology partnerships, in a changing world of geopolitics?
Well, I think as others have said, the Ukraine war and other geopolitical tensions around the world has only quickened the interest in partnerships between countries like Germany and Australia and indeed Colombia. Two quick points I would make. When I began on this green hydrogen journey, arriving in Germany 2 years ago, the discussion was all about Australia's natural endowments and the skills and capabilities that Germany had. Now there's a third factor. It's now about values. We both live in regions which are subject to serious great power tensions, and we both are thinking much more seriously about engaging with those with whom we share values. That's driving it. The second thing that's changed is that through COVID and the years that have rolled on after, we are, I think like you are, much more concerned about dependencies and supply chains on which we can rely and trust. So the next field for me after green hydrogen is critical minerals, where, to be perfectly frank, there is a very strong Japanese interest, there is a very strong and active American interest in engaging more deeply in my country so that Germany can be assured of supplies of vital critical minerals going forward. That's the next canvas on which we need to make a painting.
Thank you. So, Minister Valdés, so the last question. I mean, Colombia is very active, but South America has the Mercosur. So perhaps one view from your side. So how do you see, is South America going into this direction as a sort of a, well, not a unit, not like the United States of America or the European Union, but do you see that there is some common approach in the South American countries?
It has always been problematic. We are not very good getting together. In fact, we don't trade that much between us, countries in South America. But I guess that's changing over time. Now we are sharing the same problems. We are all dependent on commodities, some oil, some copper, and we all want somehow to go beyond that. So there are many things that tie us together, and I see new opportunities of cooperation with the South going on, much more than a few years ago.
Thank you. So I hope you sensed a sense of hope in this panel. I think there's a lot going on in countries, with companies, and I'm very glad that you were here and shared these interesting thoughts with us. Thank you.